Good evening. Let me start tonight with something that on its face is simple. It is a report. It is a narrow report. It is not a speech, not a signed agreement, not a ceremony. It is a report about a possible meeting. But sometimes the smallest reports carry the most weight. According to Bloomberg, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of President Donald Trump, are seeking to travel to Moscow later this month. The purpose, as described, would be to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The focus of those talks, if they happen, would be draft peace proposals. That's it. That is the full factual footprint we have. No confirmed date, no finalized plans, no official announcement, just a report that this is being sought. And yet, when a report like this surfaces, it does not do so in a vacuum. It arrives quietly, but it lands heavily, because it involves names, roles, and locations that, by their very nature, pull attention toward them. Moscow, Vladimir Putin, peace talks. And two American figures, one an official envoy, one a family member of the president, seeking to meet him. The report does not say the trip has been approved. It does not say the meeting is scheduled. It does not say what the proposals contain. It does not even say whether the talks will ultimately happen. It simply says they are seeking to travel. Sometimes diplomacy begins not with a handshake, but with an itinerary request. Hear that, one might say, just the sound of a door being tested. Steve Witkoff is identified in the report by his title, U.S. Special Envoy. That designation alone places him squarely within the machinery of official diplomacy. It tells us his role is to speak, to listen, to carry messages, to explore possibilities. Jared Kushner is identified by relationship President Trump's son-in-law. That identification carries its own meaning, and the report does not elaborate beyond that. It does not explain why he is involved. It does not explain what role he would play in the meeting. It simply states that both men are seeking to travel to Moscow together, and that pairing matters because it is exactly as unusual as it sounds. The talks, according to the report, are expected to focus on draft peace proposals. Drafts, proposals, not agreements, not terms, not conclusions. Drafts live in pencil. They exist to be changed. They exist to be read aloud, marked up, folded, set aside. And again, the report is careful. It says expected. It says plans are not finalized. This is not a story about what will happen. It is a story about what might. There is a difference, as one might quietly note, between a meeting and the idea of a meeting. The report comes from Bloomberg, which attributes the information to people familiar with the matter. It does not quote them directly. It does not attribute statements by name. It does not provide documents. It provides the outline. And in broadcast news, outlines are often where the real story begins. Because an outline invites attention. It invites questions. Not questions that add facts, but questions that sit alongside them. Who is going? Where are they going? When? And for what stated purpose? The answers, as provided, are limited, and we are going to stay within those limits. Later this month, Moscow, meeting President Vladimir Putin, discussing draft peace proposals, plans not finalized. That is the full set. But within that set, there is gravity. Meetings with Vladimir Putin are not casual. They are not routine. They are not background noise. They are events that, even when preliminary, even when tentative, are watched closely. The report does not describe the atmosphere of the meeting. It does not describe the agenda beyond the drafts. It does not describe who else might be present, or whether the meeting would be public or private. It does not say whether the peace proposals originate from the United States from Russia or from elsewhere. It does not say how long the talks would last. It does not say whether they would succeed. It does not say whether they would fail. It says only that they are being sought, and sometimes the seeking itself is the story. You can hear the careful phrasing in the report. Seeking to travel, expected to focus. Plans are not finalized. This is language designed to convey motion without certainty. It is the language of diplomacy before diplomacy hardens into record. It's not the meeting yet, as one might put it. It's the shadow of the meeting. And in that shadow, everything is quieter. There are no microphones, no podiums, no flags arranged just so. There is only the possibility of conversation. The involvement of a special envoy suggests a formal channel. The involvement of a presidential family member suggests something more personal, or at least more informal. But the report does not tell us which, if either, will dominate. It does not tell us how the roles would be divided. It does not tell us who would speak first. It simply places both names on the same plane, headed toward the same city, if the trip occurs. Moscow, of course, is not a neutral backdrop, but the report does not dwell on that. It does not need to. The name alone carries weight. So does the timing. Later this month, not someday, not next year, soon enough to be imminent, far enough away to remain uncertain. And peace proposals, by definition, suggest a conflict context. But the report does not specify details. It does not name the conflict. It does not describe the stakes. It leaves those words standing alone. Peace proposals. Sometimes the most emotionally charged words in diplomacy are the simplest ones. There's a reason, someone once said, we lower our voices when we say the word peace. This story at this stage is not loud. It is not declarative. It is not final. It is quiet. It is careful. It is, for now, incomplete. And that is where we begin. Because when envoys seek meetings, when drafts are prepared, when plans are not finalized, we are watching the very earliest phase of something that could become larger or could disappear entirely. For tonight, we are going to stay exactly where the facts are, right here, at the beginning, following the thread of a possible meeting. So let's stay with what the report actually says and follow it carefully. Bloomberg reports that U.S. Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are seeking to travel to Moscow. Seeking. That word matters. It indicates intention without completion. It tells us there has been outreach, but not arrival. The destination named is Moscow. The person they would seek to meet is President Vladimir Putin. The timing is later this month. And the subject matter, as described, would be draft peace proposals. Those are the 4 pillars of the report. Nothing more, nothing less. There is no suggestion in the reporting that the meeting has been confirmed. There is no statement that the Kremlin has agreed. There is no indication that a venue has been reserved or that security details are in place. Plans are not finalized. That phrase, again, appears almost as a quiet refrain. It is a reminder that this story exists in conditional tense, and conditional tense is where diplomacy often lives longest. The report does not tell us how the proposed trip came together. It does not explain who initiated contact. It does not describe whether intermediaries were involved or whether formal diplomatic channels were used. It simply says that the 2 men are seeking to travel. That absence of detail is not a flaw in the reporting. It is a reflection of where the process stands. Early, delicate, unsettled. Steve Witkoff's role, as identified, is official. He is a U.S. Special Envoy. That title exists precisely for moments like this. Moments when conversations may need to happen quietly, outside the glare of a summit or a public negotiation. Jared Kushner's presence, as reported, is factual but unexplained. The report does not attribute a title to him beyond his relationship to the president. It does not assign him a diplomatic role. It does not describe his function in the expected talks. It simply includes his name, and inclusion is not the same as explanation. The report does not speculate on why both men would travel together. It does not say who would lead the discussions. It does not say whether one would speak and the other would observe. It leaves that entirely open, which means that at this stage we are not meant to infer, we are meant to observe. The talks, if they occur, are expected to focus on draft peace proposals. Drafts are not decisions. Drafts are working documents. They are meant to be revised, rejected, reshaped, or set aside. They are conversation starters. The report does not describe the content of these drafts. It does not say what issues they address. It does not say who authored them. It does not say whether they have been shared already or whether they would be presented for the first time in Moscow. It simply says that peace proposals are expected to be the focus. That expectation, again, is carefully worded. It signals intent without commitment. Sometimes, as one might quietly reflect, the most important word in a sentence is expected. The report also does not say whether other officials would be involved. It does not mention advisors, interpreters, or additional delegations. It does not mention whether the meeting would be bilateral or expanded. It does not mention whether the talks would be recorded or summarized publicly. It does not mention whether there would be a joint statement afterward. All of that remains unknown. And that is not unusual at this stage. In fact, it is typical. Early diplomatic efforts often surface first as outlines, a possible trip, a possible meeting, a possible agenda. Only later do they harden into schedules and statements. What is notable here is not the detail, but the direction. The direction, as reported, is toward Moscow. The direction is toward conversation. The direction is toward peace proposals. But direction is not destination. The report is explicit that plans are not finalized. That means they could change. They could be delayed. They could be cancelled. They could also move forward. But the reporting does not say which. It holds the story in suspension. And in broadcast terms, suspension creates tension not by adding drama, but by withholding resolution. The names involved amplify that tension simply by existing in the same sentence. Steve Witkoff, an official envoy. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law. Vladimir Putin, the Russian president. Moscow, the venue. Later this month, the time frame, draft peace proposals, the subject. Each of these elements is straightforward on its own. Together, they form a narrative that feels larger than the sum of its parts, even though we are not adding anything to it. That is the power of placement. The report does not editorialize. It does not characterize the effort as bold or controversial. It does not frame it as historic or routine. It simply reports the fact of the attempt. And that restraint is important because it keeps us anchored. There is no mention of outcomes, no mention of expectations for success, no mention of obstacles, just the attempt. The report also does not specify the month beyond later this month. It does not anchor the trip to a specific date on the calendar. That again reflects uncertainty. Diplomatic calendars are fragile. They change with weather, with security concerns, with political developments. But none of that is stated here. What is stated is that a meeting is being sought and that seeking is happening now. The presence of draft peace proposals suggests preparation. It suggests that something has been written down, that ideas have been formalized enough to be shared, at least in draft form. But draft does not mean agreed. It does not even mean accepted for discussion. It means proposed, and proposals are invitations. There is a vulnerability, someone once said, in offering a draft. The report does not tell us whether the drafts have been welcomed. It does not tell us whether they have been requested. It does not tell us whether they are one-sided or collaborative. It tells us only that they exist and that they would be discussed if the meeting happens. That conditional remains. And because of that, the story does not yet resolve into action. It remains potential. It remains possibility. It remains something we are watching. And watching in this case means holding the facts steady, without embellishment, without assumption. It means recognizing that sometimes the most consequential developments in international affairs begin as a quiet line in a financial news report. A line that says, 2 people are seeking to travel. They want to talk. They have drafts in hand, and nothing yet is final. 2 Americans, identified by role and by relationship, are reported to be seeking travel to Moscow. The goal, according to Bloomberg, would be a meeting with President Vladimir Putin. The subject of that meeting, if it occurs, would be draft peace proposals. The timing would be later this month, and the plans, as stated clearly and repeatedly, are not finalized. That is the full shape of the story. It does not resolve into a conclusion. It does not culminate in a decision. It does not arrive at an outcome. It pauses. And that pause is not an absence of information. It is the information. Because what we are seeing here is not the end of a diplomatic effort, or even the middle of one. We are seeing the moment before a door may open or may remain closed. The report does not tell us whether visas have been issued. It does not tell us whether schedules have been cleared. It does not tell us whether the Russian side has agreed to the meeting. It tells us only that the attempt is underway. That distinction matters. Diplomacy, especially at this level, rarely announces itself with certainty at the outset. It emerges in fragments: a proposed trip, a requested meeting, a draft document circulated quietly. Only later, if things progress, do we see the structure built around it. This report shows us the foundation being tested. Steve Witkoff's involvement signals an official pathway. His title is not decorative. It exists for moments when governments want to explore options without locking themselves into public positions. Jared Kushner's inclusion, as reported, is factual and unadorned. The report does not justify it. It does not contextualize it. It does not critique it. It simply states it. And sometimes that is the most revealing approach, because it allows the fact to stand on its own without being bent toward interpretation. The expected focus on draft peace proposals is similarly restrained in its presentation. Drafts are by nature incomplete. They are meant to be handled, discussed, revised, or discarded. They are not declarations. They are not commitments. They are beginnings. The report does not tell us whether those drafts are aligned with Russian interests. It does not tell us whether they reflect American priorities. It does not tell us whether they are a starting point or a response. It tells us only that they exist and that they would be discussed if the meeting happens. That conditional clause continues to shape everything about this story. Plans are not finalized. Those words do a great deal of work here. They keep the story grounded. They prevent it from outrunning the facts. They remind us that this is not a finished narrative. It is an unfolding one, and unfolding does not mean inevitable. The timing, later this month, gives the story a near horizon. It suggests that developments one way or another may become clearer soon. But the report does not promise that clarity. It does not guarantee that we will see confirmation or cancellation or outcome. It leaves us here in the present tense, watching, waiting, holding the facts carefully without stretching them. There's a moment, as one might say softly, when history hasn't decided what it's going to be yet. This is one of those moments. The names involved are familiar, the location is charged, the subject matter is weighty, but the reporting itself remains narrow and precise. That precision is important. It allows us to understand exactly what is known and exactly what is not. What is known is this: an effort is being made to meet, drafts exist, conversations are being sought. What is not known is whether those conversations will occur or what they would produce if they did. And so the responsible place to end this story tonight is not with a conclusion but with a boundary. We stop where the facts stop. We acknowledge the significance of the attempt without assigning it meaning it is not yet earned. We recognize the gravity of peace proposals without assuming their success or failure. We note the seeking of a meeting without presuming its outcome. That is not restraint for its own sake, that is accuracy. This report tells us that something may be happening. It does not tell us what that something will become. And until it does, the story remains open, quiet, unfinished.